Hey guys, Walt's here with a short video going over the setting maps. So setting maps are a graphic organizer that we're going to use before we read a short story to kind of give ourselves some context. Now, when you read a short story, um, just I guess flat, like you haven't like studied the author or what time period the story was written in. Sometimes you don't get the right vibe about the story. You might think, well, I don't really understand what's going on. I found that if we take a look at what was going on at the time the story was written, and also consider the time period in which the story is set, then that can give us give us a better appreciation of what actually happens in the story. Because everything that's going on at the time period that the author is writing is going to somehow make its way into the story. It's all part of giving the story its vibes, its effect on you. So let's talk about the setting of our first story. It was written in 1953. That's when it was published, and it's set in like the 1950s in England. And we're going to also do USA here. So for this to work, what you'll need is a sheet of notebook paper or any paper, and you want to turn it landscape, so like this versus that, like this. And in the middle, write 1950s England, USA. Now that's where we're going to put the time and place of our story. So setting is time and place first and foremost. Now, for the context of this story, I want to focus on this idea. So in the 1950s in England, you had a period of economic stuff was good. The World War II was over. People were back to work. The factories were rolling. Time or money was good. People were working and being very productive. So you had this shift from people working in urban environments. You had either you lived in a big city and you worked in a factory, or you had an office job, or you were a farmer and you lived in the country. People started kind of meeting in the middle there, and you had people moving out of the cities, going from a less urban environment to a more suburban environment. So, people were still close to one another, but think the houses are more spread out. You've got your own driveway, you've got a yard with a picket fence, this kind of all-American looking like 1950s house vibe setup. So the physical description of the setting of the time period is going to go around there. All right, now when we talk about setting, first we're talking about time and place, but we also have to talk about the customs, beliefs, and values of the people in that time and place. So for the context of this story, I want to focus mainly on roles in the household and why it was so important for men to work. So the customs here, men work and women stay at home and raise the family. And there was also a big focus on hospitality. It was customary to have visits and people over and to offer people hospitality. Now, here in the South, we do pride ourselves on our hospitality. When people come over for a visit, we offer them food and drink. So it's not so far off than what I think we're used to. Now, the belief systems come from the customs. Our customs, what we do as people, usually is motivated, at least in part, by what we believe is important. So, at this time, it was believed that it was important for men to lead the household, and that the women were nurturers. The men were not the nurturers in the family. That was the role of the mother, to be the nurturer in the family and in the community. Status was very important. You had this idea of keeping up with the Joneses. What that means is if I'm Mr. Walls and I walk outside of my house and I'm looking at my yard with my picket fence and a tree in it, and in my driveway I've got a 1952 Cadillac or Chevy or whatever, and I look over to my left and my neighbor, Mr. Jones, has a 1954 Cadillac or Chevy or whatever, I haven't kept up with Mr. Jones. I have to go out and I got to make sure that my stuff is as good or better than my neighbors, because times are booming, and the more stuff I have, the newer, the nicer stuff I have, that's a signal to society that I have a better status. Now, ask yourself, does that idea still permeate status today? I mean, why do they call them? Why is it the iPhone 12 and not just the iPhone? It's always an iPhone. It's always been an iPhone. But like, why do we add that information to the end of things? Go back and look into some of that stuff. Like, why did they start putting year models on cars? And what did that do to car sales? Anyways, now there's also this focus on science. Science has the answers. You started to see this emphasis on teaching math and science more rigorously in schools, because we were in the space age, or we were starting the space race, and we were in the Cold War. So the United States and England were focused on making sure that its adversaries, mainly the USSR, didn't outpace it in its pursuit of math and science. We had to get to the moon first, or so those are the core beliefs. And the value here, this is kind of what, generally speaking, was held to be important by the people at the time. Had hard work, family, status, all that was very much valued by people in this time period. So now, after watching this video, your job is to go read the short story "Lamb to the Slaughter" by Roald Dahl, and keep this stuff in mind as you read the story. I'll have that in a separate video with a little read aloud as well. So keep this stuff in mind as you read the story. Hope you guys are having a good one. Bye.